So in the second part, we're going to talk about validity and factors that affect research validity. We know from before that a measure is valid if it measures what it's supposed to measure. And so psychological research is said to be valid if it provides an understanding about behavior that it's supposed to be providing a understanding about. So it's a valid research design measures what it's supposed to test. There's different kinds of validity though. Um, One of those kinds is statistical validity. And statistical validity concerns the extent to which the researcher uses the statistics that it gains from the study properly and draws the appropriate conclusions from the statistical analysis. So basically whether or not statistical inference of the covariation between the variables is justified. And construct validity, which is the second kind we're going to look at, this gets us back to the operational definitions of our constructs. All research should have its basis in theory, and what we're looking at here is, does the experimental procedure that we've chosen to support our theory successfully rule out other possibilities? So how well do the results support the theory behind the research? Once you have looked at the construct validity and the statistical validity, the next thing you need to look at is an experiment internally valid? And internal validity refers to the internal consistency or logic of the experiment that allows the results to be meaningful. So whether an observed covariation should be considered a causal relationship, because just because there is a correlation doesn't necessarily mean that there's a causal relationship. We've looked at that in the past. Another thing that we need to look at with that internal validity is confounds, because confounds can threaten our internal validity. External validity refers to the degree to which the researchers are able to generalize an observed causal relationship across different measures, persons, settings, and times. For research to achieve the highest degree of external validity, its results should generalize three ways: to other populations, to other environments, and to other times. In fact, experimental psychologists have been criticized for knowing a great deal about college freshmen or sophomores and white rats, and very little about anything else. A survey by Sears in 1986 showed that 75% of the research that was published in 1980 used college students as participants. So you have to think about, would other populations show those same results as college students? And we also know that many of our old research studies have used only male participants. Would females have answered the same way? So that's an example of how they need to generalize to other populations. If they're conducted in a laboratory, would they get the same results if they had done that experiment in the field? And so that's the other environments. This is just a quick list of some of the factors that might affect internal validity. The subjects, and now this is internal validity. So they're looking at characteristics of the subjects, the size of the population, Did you have an adequate sample? Attrition. A lot of times they start with a large study, but if it's a very long study, a lot of times people will drop out of the study for different reasons. The time, either the time given for data collection or the time for analyzing the data. And also the instrument. Was the instrument actually measuring what it was supposed to be measuring? Some factors affecting external validity is again subjects, but in this instance we're talking about the characteristics, the in in external validity you would be looking at what we talked about in a couple of slides ago, that they're not necessarily representative of the norm. So all college students or all males, or Kohlberg's theory of moral development, he used all males and they were at, I don't know, like middle school age. So would that have necessarily been true if he had had a more representative sample that included females as well as males? The research environment. If your research is done in a highly controlled lab environment, would the results be the same in the real world? And of course, methodology of data collection. One of probably the best examples that I can think of off the top of my head to look at some of these factors affecting external validity would be the example of Masters and Johnson's famous research project over female sexuality. First of all, I think it could be argued that not just everybody would have volunteered to participate or be a subject in that research. So you could say that maybe there was some personality characteristics that might have affected who their sample was, that they might have been a bit more, I guess extroverted is the word that comes to mind, than perhaps your normal person. It was conducted in a laboratory setting, and while the Showtime series kind of shows it as a more of an orgy type setting, it was actually very scientific and very professional. And they used various measurement devices to measure muscular and vascular responses to sexual arousal. And so it could probably be argued that the devices used to measure those responses might have affected the outcome somewhat, and that the results might be different if it had been conducted in a different environment, a different research environment. Of course, I'm not sure how you would have done that, but anyway, that's an example. For both of these kinds of validity, both internal and external validity, to be really high, but of course there is a trade-off. High internal validity, if you're really controlling the environment and you're really controlling the all of the factors, that tends to decrease the external validity, because if you've controlled everything, then no, it probably wouldn't be something that could necessarily be easily replicated in a field experiment, and vice versa. So there is a trade-off, but they are both important, so you kind of want to pick a happy medium, I guess. Anyway, that's validity, and these are some of the references that I used in putting both parts of the experimental research PowerPoint together.